Going on, everyone? Welcome back to Selling Ourselves. We're Jake and Braden. So the purpose of this podcast is one, discuss and review habits, traits, mindsets of the top performing athletes, top 1% of entrepreneurs that we come across. And then two, document our journey on our entrepreneurial endeavors and ideally becoming part of the 1% and making our first million, because we wish the others did so, and so we hope to do the same. So, as Braden is taking out his dog and going over the context of today, we're going to be talking about solving exactly on demo calls. And so, some of the things that we've come across and heard, which seem to be industry agnostic, is that when people are running demos, they think it's requirement to showcase all the nitty-gritty features that their product has, thinking that that will add value to the call, and that showing the maybe will be what hooks people to get them onto the next call or to trial or to eventually purchase. And so going through some courses, reading some information from other leaders that have done this for the last 20 years, it seems like it's a more contradicting concept to show everything rather than solving exactly what we're going to show today and what we've come across and what we've started to implement and seen some early success. So kind of setting the table there, I'll kind of have to use stats of just what do we mean when we're saying solving exactly?
Yeah, that's some really good context for sure. I think this extends beyond demos too. Like I want to make that point of when you're in a sales interaction with somebody, I think we get too enamored with our product sometimes and we're like, our product does a million awesome things that are so cool. And we think that the prospect's going to also think all million of those things are cool. And when in reality, when somebody comes to you and wants to buy your product or, comes to you and says, hey, can your product help me with this? Like they have maybe a list of like 5 things. Maybe 5 would be like big, actually, I would think. But like they have a list of like a couple of things that are just like big major blocks for them that they need to solve. And they're not looking for all those million fine-tooth features. They just have a couple of those big blocks. So for us as sales professionals, our job is not to just dump a million things on them and hope that one of them hits on one of their big pillars. Our job is to find out what those big pillars are and show them exactly how we can solve that particular issue. And so I think we talked about this a little bit, Jake, but point number 1 is that we need to figure out what those blocks are, and we need to figure out like how big they are. Like how big of a problem is that for them? And once we figure that out, then our job is to show our solution can fix that problem. So that problem's huge, we fix it, and that's it. So that's how I would define solving exactly.
No, I think you nailed it. And I think from the context of the nagging question that is sitting in our buyers' minds throughout demos and or calls is, can this solve the problem I'm having? Or is this going to solve my problem? And so the outcome we want to have at the end of the demo is, this is exactly what we're looking for. Like this exactly meets our needs. And so if you feel like you're not showing enough of your demo, then it's probably not a demo problem. It's probably a discovery problem. And you're not just digging deep enough to find the root cause of the problems, which is a whole separate conversation. But for the purpose of this, we want to get to this end goal of at the end where they can audibly say, no, this is exactly what we're looking for. And the way we're doing that is by solving exactly on a one-to-one basis, no more, no less. And so we kind of wanted to give you some context as to maybe some counterintuitive arguments of why not solving one-to-one backfires. And I can kind of kick it off with number 1 of it just dilutes your value proposition. So ideally you want to keep it simple and compelling and straight to the point. So if they have this overarching problem with 3 or 4 root causes, we want to solve those 3 or 4 root causes one-to-one exactly, no more, no less. Because then it keeps their problem in a condensed, confined narrative, and then it just meets our solution on that one-to-one basis, and it solves exactly what they're doing. And I'm going to kick it off to you of when we don't do that, what that opens up.
Yeah, so I agreed with that. I think a good analogy, like image, is drinking water through a fire hose. Of like, People hop off the call if you feature dump them with a million things, and they have no idea what just happened. Like, they don't even know if you can solve their problem because it was somewhere in the midst of your 30-minute feature dump. Like, so that is definitely point number one. Point number two is like hits home for me because when you feature dump like that, or you bring up irrelevant things on a demo, things that aren't necessarily relevant to the prospect and the problem they're trying to solve, it oftentimes creates more objections than it does creating interest in your product. Like if you bring up feature B and they don't need it, then either in their mind, whether they speak this or not, they're thinking, I don't need this. This is like, why are you showing me this? This is dumb. Or two, their mind starts working of all the things that wouldn't, of all the ways that wouldn't work in their situation. And so instead of thinking about, oh, this product solves my problem or my three main problems that I had, they start thinking about how the one feature that they don't even need is not going to work in their situation. And so you get down this rabbit hole talking about this one particular feature and how it works and how it actually wouldn't apply to them, and 30 minutes go away and you have to head to the next call and you didn't actually address what they wanted to address. So that'd be number two. It creates objections. And number three, Jake, round us out.
Yeah, really it just complicates the customer's decision process. And so something that AEs ideally map out is, what is included throughout the whole process of evaluating a solution. And so by creating that overkill feeling of showing everything possible that the product does, in hopes that it may induce like this cool, nice to have, feature rich product, what it's really doing is it's just requiring more stakeholders to get involved in the deal, to include their feedback where it's necessary, essentially. So by showing different areas of the product may require different protocols, may require different access to certain areas of the business that they need to loop in to get other inputs. So instead of already having to get 12 people's approval in an enterprise situation, now you have to get 15, 16, 17, which is just another chance to get that no to kill the deal or stall the deal. And so we want to keep it into a confined area of just, this is the main problem, these are the 3 or 4 root causes, and we want to solve those exactly so we can avoid essentially the three things we just ran through. And so the cure to that, on the flip side of why we should avoid that, is to value map. And so what value mapping is essentially uncovering those 3 to 4 root causes and then showcasing a capability that directly comes back to one of those root causes. And so, Stutz, if you want to kind of go through the narrative or the structure that we've been working on as far as being able to do that, might give people a sense of what we mean.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things that happens on demos sometimes too, because just like the light bulbs that go off and like the oh crap moments that customers have that you don't get when you feature dump on people. But value mapping kind of starts out, like you said, with deep discovery. Like, you got to be good at discovery. We'll do that in a separate podcast. But like, let's assume you did great discovery and you figured out, what the 3 pillars are that they're trying to solve. From there, summarize those things. Make sure you got that right. We'll cover that again in a different podcast. But once you know that, once you summarize, they have confirmed that, hey, yeah, those are the 3 things we're trying to solve. Value mapping comes down to showing one feature at a time, or picking let me back up. So value mapping comes down to picking the features of your product that can solve the problem exactly and solve directly the problem that they just told you they had. So in our case, let's say, they have problem A and just show them the feature that solves problem A. And the way you go about doing that is you kind of use a script similar to this, and you start off with, hey, you mentioned problem A was a problem. You mentioned it was affecting these stakeholders and kind of just causing issues for your team in general. So in Printer Logic, this is how things could be different for you, or this is how Printer Logic solves the problem. And then you pause and you say, Jake, how does this compare to, what you're doing today? Or how is this different from what you're doing? Or some sort of summary question to then throw the ball back in their court to get them talking about it. So instead of the normal feature dump demos where you show everything and then you get to the end and you're like, any questions? Crickets. It's more of a discussion. It's, hey, you mentioned this was a problem. This is how our product solves that problem. How is that different than what you're doing? When you have a discussion, that's when they can ask questions about that specific thing. Once you tie that up, move on to the next one and do the exact same thing. Hey, you also mentioned this was a problem. Okay. Because that's a problem, here's how you can solve it with our product. And, how is that different than what you're doing? Or what could your team do if they had this in place? And I think that's just like a really quality way to make demos more of a discussion and less of a webinar style where it's just talking at people. And then at the end, like, did you like it? So that's value mapping. Do you have anything to add to value mapping, Jake? I know you're pretty good at that.
No, I would just say that your customers buy pain relievers. They don't buy features. And so ideally the formula, and this is just a framework. This isn't, I think you did a good job of stating that ideally we want to discuss the pain first that they mentioned before showing a feature. We don't just want to go feature, 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 feature. Does that make sense? Feature, feature, feature. It's, hey, you mentioned that X was a pain. Here's how we solve Y. What are your thoughts? Just by keeping that simple framework before showing each individual feature, the 3, 4, 5 that you're going to go through, I think just gives you that frame that they have the confidence that you understand what you're trying to solve for or what you're trying to help them with. And then B, we're prioritizing the problems over the features. And we can get into the whole loss aversion of, people are 2 times more likely to avoid a loss than to gain the potential similarity, whatever it is, something like that. And so you can get into the whole psychological factor there too, but I think it gets into the whole thing of we're not doing a product demo, we're doing a sales demo. And really they're coming to us because they have a list of problems or initiative they're trying to solve. And then our demo should be tailored towards hitting those key fine points. So I think you nailed it.
Exactly. Yeah. Your product's only valuable if it solves a problem for these people or it makes their lives better in some way. And that's all your job is as a salesperson, is figure out what problems they're having, what challenges they're faced with, and how you can help get them past those.
That's right.
So don't be dumb. Don't feature dump. And solve exactly. Hopefully that framework helps. Like Jake said, summarize the pain, show how your feature changes that, and then throw the ball back in their court and get them to start talking about how it's different than what they're doing.
So here's a framework to take that you can apply immediately. So when doing your demo, keep the framework of mind is pain, feature, feedback. So recap a pain that they said in the discovery, showcase a feature that solves exactly to that pain that they talked about, and then ask for feedback. As we've talked about earlier, there's a list of questions you can go through, but a simple one is just, how does that compare to what you're doing now? Or how is that applicable to your current situation? Just to keep the dialogue going, continue the conversation, have it be a constant back and forth communication throughout the whole demo, and avoids that choppy, feature-rich demo.
100%. Pain, feature, feedback. You heard it from Jake Engel first. Trademark that.
I like that one.
All right, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, man.